Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mind Over Mountain with me, Cheryl Strayed. This week, my guest is hiker, mountaineer, and writer Cara Benson. Cara's the author of the new memoir, An Arms Full of Birds. She has hiked many peaks, including all 46 of the Adirondack peaks, and she's found healing and solace in the wilderness. I didn't ask Cara to be on the show only because she's done great things on hiking trails and mountains, but also because her book really spoke to my heart, especially right now. Sadly, a month ago, I lost my husband, Brian Lindstrom, and this is the first episode that I've recorded since his death. Cara wrote deeply in her book about her own grief over the loss of her partner, John, and about the ways that venturing into the wilderness has healed her. One thing we both came to is the only way to make it through deep suffering is to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And in my conversation with Cara, she reminded me how I might go about doing just that. Let's listen. Cara Benson, welcome to Mind Over Mountain.
Cheryl Strayed, thank you for having me on Mind Over Mountain.
I'm really honored that you said yes to this. Obviously, this is a really kind of big episode for me. It's the first I'm recording since my husband died. And Cara, one of the things that I did over these last few weeks, as I've been in just this deep grief, is I read your beautiful memoir, An Arms Full of Birds, a personal field guide to love, loss, and commitment. And it's all about, well, I mean, obviously we have so much in common. It's about the ways that you have suffered through recovering from addiction and dealing with the grief and loss of your beloved partner, John, and the solace that you found walking and hiking in the wilderness. So obviously we have something in common. I've written about that in my book, Wild, and about my grief over the death of my mother. So thank you. Thank you for writing such a powerful book that spoke a lot of truth to my heart.
That means so much to me. Your book meant so much to me and has meant so much to so many of us out here. So to have that reflected back from you is such an incredible honor. I've been asked who were the people that I was reading when I was writing my book, and there were three writers that I considered who were my comps, even though I wouldn't necessarily put that in a proposal because the comps are not supposed to be the pie in the. Oh, I compare myself to Leo Tolstoy. That's who my comp is. We don't put the pie in the sky authors, but it's Cheryl Strayed's Wild, anything by Anne Lamott, and Terry Tempest Williams, When Women Were Birds. Those are the three writers that I really feel, if the three of you got together and wrote a book, I feel like that would be An Arms Full of Birds. So it's unbelievably incredible to hear you respond to it so movingly. So thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I love Anne Lamott and Terry Tempest Williams as well. So I'm with you, sister. And I'm going to put you among them too. I love your work. And I want to just begin with this thing that we have in common, finding that power, that solace, that salvation, that healing in putting one foot in front of the other, and specifically in the wilderness. When is the first time? Take us back to that first time you ventured out onto a trail and went hiking.
Yeah, one of the first times that I write about in the book was early in my sobriety, and I was really raw. We talk about being stark raving sober, and I was out of my mind. And nerve endings raw, and my best friend, alcohol and drugs were gone, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I got asked to go on a backpacking trip. I was woefully unprepared for what this might be, and I got a wool blanket, a gym bag that I strapped my arms into, and proceeded out into the woods in sneakers and cotton clothing and mud, and really thought, actually, when we first got to the site in the backcountry where we were going to set up for the first night, I nearly actually had a panic attack. So initially, it wasn't this love at first sight relationship with being out in the woods. I panicked. What do you mean? We're just going to be here for the night? There's no out. There's nowhere to go.
Where's the bathroom?
Where's the bathroom? Where are the other people? Where's my out? Where's my out?
Yeah.
Not realizing that the out was always me. I needed to get out of me and be distracted and from myself. But that night, and as I write about in the book, that night, laying out on the rocks in the middle of this stream, there were these rocks protruding up out of the stream that were high enough for us to lie on as the water rushed on either side of us. And we laid down and looked up at the stars. Something clicked, something changed. I finally felt like I was right where I was supposed to be and who I was supposed to be. I wasn't supposed to be anybody else, doing anything else, anywhere else. And those moments were few and hard to come by, especially in early recovery. And it was all because of laying on those rocks in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere. And so that was something that has stayed with me since then. I realized that is always available to me, especially for me when I go out in the woods, that I can just click in. And suddenly, if I take that moment to really look around and really let the woods play on me, something's going to shift sooner or later.
I mean, what do you think that is? Is it the magnificent beauty of nature? Is it the kind of silence? I mean, I almost said disconnectedness, because in this day and age, we're always like, we think of connectedness as like being on the internet or being on your phone or talking to somebody. And I always thought to be in nature, especially really in deep wilderness, you're more connected than ever. You're disconnected to the stuff, the technology, the stuff that kind of makes our brains crazy, and connected to all the living things. I'm curious, like when you were lying on those rocks, what do you think it was exactly that gave you that sense of peace or wholeness?
That's a great question. I love the idea of drilling down into that. Bill McKibben wrote a book called The Age of Missing Information. I was just talking about this the other day. And he took 24 hours of recordings from a particular television station in not just the one station, but it was a satellite system. So there were, 100 and something different stations that he recorded, one 24-hour stretch of all the information that could be gleaned from watching TV, every different channel in that one 24-hour period. And he watched it all. Obviously not in one 24-hour stretch over the course of time. And then he compared that with one 24-hour stretch of time out in the woods up in the Adirondacks. And the rhythms of media, the rhythms of technology are I don't think they're natural. They're not organic to my heart. I mean, there's some media certainly that works with heartbeat and but it's really just mimicking the heartbeat. It's mimicking the ocean. It's mimicking the waves. It's mimicking the wind through the trees. It's mimicking the rhythms of the earth. And but the rhythms of the earth, actually being with them, I think that it's visceral. My body, it helps me to be in the rhythms of my own body in a way that media can never do, except by trying to replicate something that it can never be. So I think it's something about being in the body, something about connecting to my animal self, the animal nature of myself, that reminds me who I am and gets me out of thinking, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think too, and you write about this powerfully in your book, is it's not just getting to the pretty place in the wilderness and absorbing it all, which is worth, the price of admission. It's beautiful to do that. But it's also about doing something physical to get there, and often actually suffering to get there, right? Both of us in our books have written about like, this hurts, or this is, I don't know if I can keep going, but I'm going to keep going. And I'm curious about your experience. Again, let's go back to that first hike and then those that came after that first one. What was your experience of the physical rigors and demands of hiking?
It's brutal, right?
Yeah.
We both lost toenails. Yeah. My back broke out, scabs and bruises. digging to that place where I just don't think I can take one more step. I don't want to take more step. I have pine needles in my eyes, and leaves stuck to my hair, and sweat rolling down my butt, and it's just miserable and uncomfortable. And yet I write about it as an exorcising something. It's catharsis, working something out of me that I've often said that I take all the angst that I hold, all the discomfort, the pain, the grief, the anger, the rage, the hurt. Sometimes I feel like I take it all out of me and I throw it into the mountain, and then I can go climb it, and I can have victory over it. For lack of a better word, I have victory over it. I summit it. I have that, and there's something that it expels that which was holding on to me, that grr that I need, the grit that I need to get to the summit. It works it out. And I feel like I have this very physical manifestation of what I just did. It's not like I was sitting in meditation and, it just clicked for me. It's like there's that mountain. I climbed it. It's so prominent. It's such a manifestation of the victory.
He explained this to me and our listeners. So there are these 46 peaks, high peaks in the Adirondacks, where you live in that near. Do you live in the Adirondack mountain range? Actually,
I don't. I live south of it. I'm closer to. I do live up on a small mountain, the Rensselaer Plateau, we call it, in my neck of the woods. I have a USGS survey. I'm at about 1,500 feet, which is kind of cool. I'm south of the Adirondack Mountains, but I'm there probably almost every weekend. I drive up there. I also love going up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire and the Green Mountains in Vermont. I'll go anywhere. I'm
right.
Have boots, we'll hike.
Me too. We got to get together and hike sometime. But in your book, I would love that too. In your book, you write about fairly early on in your love of hiking, you set this goal, do these 46. Is it peaks in the Adirondacks? You summited each of those, or is it just hike on 46 of these peaks?
No, it's summiting these specific peaks, 46 peaks, and they have specifications for what classified them as these original 46. They had to be over 4,000 feet. They had to be a certain amount of distance from the next highest prominence. So some of the ones they originally surveyed that made the original 46, this was back in the early 1900s, don't classify anymore. Some of them aren't quite 4,000, but because it's this long historical tradition now and people have patches and there's correspondences, they've just stayed with the original 46. It became an obsession of mine. It was something to think about and perseverate on. How am I going to get these 3 mountains in? How am I going to get to that one? And how am I going to get these 5 in a day? And then once I did all of them, I had to, I got to do them in winter now. So I did them all in winter. And in fact, one of my claims to fame is that I'm in the first 100 women of winter 46ers in the Adirondacks. So
I love it.
Yeah, sometimes I pull that out as old OG on the trail when I run into younger women on the trail. I'm like, well,
What number are you?
Well, they don't actually give numbers for the winter. They give numbers for the all season, and I'm like, 5,000 something in the all season, and then they just put W next to you when you get the winter, and I went and counted and looked through I just was curious how many other women were there. And then I realized I was in the first 100.
And in the winter, I'm going to assume you snowshoe to the summit?
Snowshoe, crampons, ice axe. It really depends on the approach. It depends on the conditions. With climate change, we have a lot more freeze thaw cycle in the Adirondacks, so the climbs can be a lot icier than they used to be. So obviously being prepared is crucial. We lost. Sadly, a young woman perished on Mount Marcy this last winter from exposure on a peak that she was out with her dog, and she was on she was on Mount Marcy, which is the highest peak in the range, the highest peak in New
Mhm.
York State. And I had just been solo hiking that very same peak 6 days before she perished on it.
Wow.
Marcy is you're breaking tree. It's a breaking tree line, so it's an
Right.
exposed summit dome. It was completely iced over. I was able to navigate it. I know Marcy really well. I hike her every winter.
Mhm.
It's kind of it's a tradition for me. And but I also always have compass bearings and have my map, and I follow. I have turnaround times, all the things. But
Yeah.
even then, we know it's a risk, right?
Yeah,
It's a risk.
absolutely. Yeah.
And sadly, I knew how icy the summit dome was, and I switched to micro spikes. I was able to navigate up and back with micro spikes, but she apparently had fallen off the trail
Mhm.
and radioed for help. And they made a heroic effort, but just couldn't get to her in time, and she perished.
That's so
Um,
sad. How
it's
terrible.
we were the whole community was shook, right?
Mhm.
We were
Mhm.
really shaken. We were really shaken. The whole community was shaken all winter. It affected everybody's climbing. It affected everybody's climbing all winter.
When you think about doing those, summiting those peaks, as you just explained quite vividly, it's dangerous and you are taking risks. How is it that you, and especially as a woman alone hiking, often alone, not always alone, but often, I get asked this question as well. How do you assess risk? How do you decide to do something or not do something? Or, when do you decide like this is too dangerous, I'm going to turn back? And when do you decide to push yourself?
That's a great question. Some of it is by intuition and experience. I would
Mhm.
say earlier on, I took probably risks that I shouldn't have. And now I'm much more cautious and have a lot more experience in assessing the risk. I
Mhm.
will, especially in winter, I will be following the trip reports to see if a trail is broken out. I have strict turnaround times, which I don't always honor.
Right.
So I guess I
I mean,
can't
it's
say
a hard thing
there's.
to do because, but I mean, as you know, people get hurt and die because of that, right? You're like, okay, I said I would turn around at, 2:30 and here it is, but we're so close. I'm going to keep going. And that is very tricky, a very tricky
It's
decision.
very tricky. Yeah. So it was 2 winters ago, some friends of mine, I wasn't hiking solo, which doesn't mean that you can't perish, of course. But and we were in deep thigh high snow, just brutal, we were in the Dix range, and it was a winter of just massive amounts of very heavy snow, and experienced hikers were struggling with orientation, with navigation, the usual, and we were on a trail that doesn't have trail markers. It's one of the herd paths or the trailless peaks in the Adirondacks. And I knew when we decided to go for this second peak, I knew right then and there, we're coming out late. We're coming out well after dark.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. I never had a sense that we weren't going to be okay. I just knew it was going to be late and hard and a lot of work.
Mhm.
And we got out at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
In the middle of a snowstorm. And
Yeah.
yet it was magical. The
Right.
snow was glistening like little diamonds in my headlamp, and it was I was so amped. I mean, I drove home and I couldn't fall asleep right away. I was so excited by the hike. My adrenaline certainly was up to get me through it. But back to the idea of assessing risk, I think because of having a tremendous amount of experience in those situations, that I had a really good sense. Like, I've never had a sense yet, oh, I'm not going to make this hike, meaning I'm not going to get myself out. I have turned back. I write about that in the book. I've turned back from big hikes down in Mexico on Orizaba. Monte Rosa in Switzerland. I've turned back on big hikes. And so because I knew I didn't have it in, well, the one with John, he didn't have it in him. But the one in Mexico, I didn't have it in me, and I knew it, and I honored that. And I think that's the thing that has been most important, is really tuning into myself. And with all the experience that I've had, having done all the research ahead of time on trail conditions, on weather conditions, I bring a little mini satellite device with me so I can get up to the date weather, up to the minute weather, right, that hangs from my pack. And then just tuning in with myself. Can I make this hike? Can I not make this hike? And honoring that. And that's worked for me so far. Yeah.
I would say that that's probably in itself quite a healing experience. I'm thinking about how it is that you came to hiking when you were in recovery by the time you went on those first hikes and said about the mission of, summiting those 46 peaks in the Adirondacks. But it was still fresh enough that I'm going to guess you also had that vivid memory of that time in your life when you were putting yourself at real risk with your drug addiction and the whole lifestyle that you were living then. How has hiking specifically helped you in your recovery, especially early on?
Well, it gave me something to obsess on, to obsess about.
Something else to be addicted to?
Something else, absolutely. Something else to be addicted to. I absolutely became addicted to hiking and all the things that go with it, needing what gear to get, who was hiking when, what mountains did I want to get to. So it gave me something to feed my obsessive mind that wasn't, and it also gave me a sense of accomplishment, that each hike that I achieved, each summit that I achieved, I started feeling stronger about myself, not only physically, but psychologically. Like I'm kind of badass.
Right.
Like this.
And you're showing up, like you're showing up to that trail. You're doing what you said you were going to do. I think that's such a powerful thing that sport and any kind of sport, whether it be hiking or, going to the gym or, achieving, the dreams that you have as an Olympian or fill in the blank for any of us. I think that the power of that physical experience is almost all in the showing up and doing it.
Showing up is huge. That's a great point. I was not a person of my word prior to recovery. You could count on me to not count on me. I was a liar. I was a cheat. I was a thief. I could not, I showed up late if I showed up at all. I was pretty raw and ravaged. And when I got to recovery and started moving into living with integrity, I had to do that to save my ass. I needed to be honest. That was the first thing, is I needed to tell people, I needed to let people in and tell them who I was, and say when I was suffering, and say if I was hurting, and say if I wanted to drink or use, or if I wanted to act out in some inappropriate manner, or tell them when I didn't want to show up, tell them that I hated them because I was so mad at them for making me show up. But I knew that that this was the only way that I was going to survive. I knew where I came from. I knew that this was the only way that I could stay sober. Let me put it that way. This was the only way that I could stay sober. I had tried like every addict or alcohol. I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. Waking up and having done it again. And this was the only way that I found that I could wake up having not done it again. And they were telling me the way that you do that is you show up, and you show up early, and you put out the materials, you get a coffee make musician, you get honest with people, you let them in. And so I started learning that I could show up, and learning that I could show up on time, and learning that I could be a person of my word, and learning that I could, and then I started developing some self-esteem and a view of myself as someone who does, who has some honor. And so it's the same thing with showing up to hiking and showing up to working out. And that, I'm typically the person who's, about 10 minutes early. If we're meeting for a hike, I'm there. It's really rare that I'm the one that anybody's waiting on, because I honor my time now in a way that I didn't used to. And I like to honor other people's time in a way that I didn't used to. And following through on all of that, gives me self-esteem.
I love the way you talked earlier too about those summits, because you didn't say like, and then the view is amazing, and of course the view is amazing. You look outward and you're like, oh, it's so pretty. But the way you spoke of it, I know that it was all about, honestly, about looking inward, like that here you are, you get to see yourself at the top of something, and at the top of something where you earned your place there, right? You carried yourself there on your own strength and courage and heart and spirit. And I do think I love that idea of, even the name of this podcast, like Mind Over Mountain, these metaphorical mountains, that we think about the summit being a place of outwardness, but it's really a place of profound inwardness, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think there's also something for me about feeling like I'm supposed to feel something, right? Like I should see the enormity of this view, and I'm supposed to feel something specific about the view when I get there, that the majesty of the range. And as as someone, as a recovering addict, as someone who's treated for depression, as someone who's treated for anxiety, has, PTSD, body dysmorphic, as someone who has all sorts of, what would I want to almost say, barriers, internal barriers to the moment, internal barriers to my surroundings, that I've always felt pressure to feel a certain way in response to something, like, oh, I'm supposed to be really taking in this view. So I have found, it's like that Rumi couplet that I reference in the book. I sought the beloved with 10,000 hands. He reached out and grabbed me by the feet. And that idea that I'm like looking for something in the view, I'm looking for something somewhere. Like I feel like I'm supposed to be feeling something or experiencing something. But if I put myself in that position and I do that footwork and I do that searching, then the moment's going to catch me. The view's going to catch me. I'm not going to get it by making myself see it a certain way. I have to like put myself in a position for it to grab me. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it's powerful and beautiful and true. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to talk about another thing. I mean, you've talked about the ways that hiking and reaching those summits helped you in your recovery, but of course, and your depression and your anxiety and your BDD and all of the difficulties, barriers, traumas that you've experienced. But of course, you've also lost your partner, John, in 2018. And I'm wondering if you could take us back. How was it that you met John? You were both in recovery and met, I believe, in a meeting. Is that right?
We did meet in a meeting. I was it was his voice that got me. I heard him before I saw him. And I'm not typically one to use this word, but I really thought that his voice and what he was talking about were sexy. And he was talking about, and he was talking about drinking more water as a means of taking care of himself. And I was like, oh, that's sexy.
And you're like, that sounds like a hiker to me. But it turned out
not a hiker.
He wasn't much of a hiker, right? Like you were like, but it's so funny you say that, because I met my husband, Brian, 9 days after I finished my hike on the Pacific Crest Trail. And I always joked with him that that it wasn't, the hot bod or the sparkling personality or whatever. It was like, he found out I'd gone on this really long walk. And I soon learned that he was like obsessed with walking. Like that is a man who got, 25,000 steps a day, every day, no matter what. And so that's what really, I think, drew him to me. So, but it turned out he was right that I like to walk. It turned out you and John weren't so compatible on the hiking.
Not on the hiking, no. We were not compatible on the hiking, and he gave it a really good try.
Yeah.
He did quite a bit of it with me initially, but I also think that he struggled with, saying no to me and having boundaries. And my job wasn't to set the boundaries for him. My job was to advocate for myself and ask for what I wanted. And his job, and his job was to say what he did or didn't want to do. So initially, I think that he went on hikes that he wasn't sure if he wanted to say no yet. I'll say that. He wasn't sure. And then when he learned that he wanted to say no, he was done. When he was done, he was done.
It's a wonderful quality to be game. And obviously there were so many ways that you were truly compatible. I was really moved in your book about by your portrait of your relationship with John, that you had, even though like we all do have some differences in tastes or preferences, so much love for each other and so much like belief in each other. It seems like you were always rooting for each other, which I think is such a foundational thing in a relationship.
I'm a better person for him having been in my life. The ways that we were different in the woods really are a way that, and I bring that forward in the book that, I was the person that really, needed to get to the summit. I was what he called an aggressive hiker. And he learned that was not for him, and that he would sit and stare at striders across the surface of the water for hours. He could sit and watch the birds for hours. He was really interested in the way things moved or sounded or interconnected. He was voracious. He had a voracious appetite for understanding how things work, both organically or mechanically. And so his attention to the natural world really influenced my attention to it. So while initially I was this aggressive hiker, just, slamming my way through the woods because that's how I did everything. I slammed my way through everything. It replicated the relationship I had inside, was just like banging around. I banged around in the woods to get to the top and to exhaust myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then feel that relief and then take some of it in, let it catch me by the feet. He could stop and look and focus in and bring his attention in and really see and receive what was in front of him. And that got me. That really influenced me. That's when I started. It was living with him and his attention to, one of the big themes of the book, obviously, is birds, his attention to birds. I started learning who the birds were around our house because he would call out their names over time. And so when he died, I couldn't walk in the world in the same way that I was walking in it before that. Everything changed. I was in the grief dream, which I know you know.
How did you walk differently?
I was lost, and I let myself be lost. I couldn't power myself through it. I was catching my breath all the time. I was out of breath all the time. I was gasping. The slightest thing could take my breath away in grief. The slightest thing could have me bent over sobbing. And
yes.
I just couldn't power forward. I had to let myself be slow, stumbling, stuttering, wandering, and lost, literally lost in the woods. I would let myself just fumble around and not know where I was headed, because that was the most honest way that I could be in the world, was to just be kind of, I would say adrift, but that's mixing metaphors, right?
But lost in the woods. I mean, I think that I think it makes sense in a literal and metaphorical sense. And it's interesting because, this impulse you had to like summit things and achieve things and set the goal and get the 46 peaks. Did you get a patch, by the way, for your 46 peaks?
Both for winter and summer. Yeah.
Okay. You got that patch, and that is about a certain kind of recovery, like a certain kind of healing. And like you said, learning how to show up and learning how to be not just on time, but early. And that's about, and I think so much about sport and athleticism and physical endeavor is about toughing it out, right? And saying like, I have to do this even though it hurts. And then the other side of it that I think is present in all of our lives, whether we're like professional athletes or just hobbyists or, is gentleness and learning how to like physically amble in a lost way or stagger, as you said. One thing I wrote in Wild, my pack was so actually heavy that I literally, I was hunched in a remotely upright position, which was both an actual literal, fact and also a figurative one, a metaphorical one. That's how I felt in my life. It's how I feel in my life right now. I'm not even hunched in a remotely upright position right now. I'm actually I'm sitting in this chair, but I'm down on the floor, and I just wonder if you can share with me those early days for you. Like, how did you find your way through the woods?
I let myself fall to the ground a lot. I let myself be flat out a lot and curled into myself in a fetal position, sobbing a lot, heaving, sobbing. I hugged this into trees, which sounds so cliched, but not just even the tree trunks. I would hug into white pines in particular are so soft. The long soft needles of white pines, I would like hug into the limbs of the trees with the leaves or with the needles, just to feel them, because they didn't, certainly people were hugging me, but there's something different about the more than human world that I didn't feel like it required anything back from me, that I could just fully receive from it in a way that didn't, that I didn't feel like, that disarmed me in a way that that's just different from being with people. I needed people too, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
People slept on my couch for the first month straight. I didn't sleep at my home alone once. But allowing myself to stop completely, everything, anything, and drop and feel what was grabbing me to feel and wouldn't let go at any given moment. I think that is, I almost don't want to say that's how I got through, because it wasn't even intentional. I had no choice. It came and got me and pulled me.
I mean, that's it. So like when people are ever like, oh, I could never live through that. I was like, we didn't sign up for this. I think that is something that's always so important to remember when we talk to people who are in deep grief, is like, the bad thing happened without their permission or agreement, and I think healing is so much just about continuing on. And because you have to. And I love what you say, this tree hugging thing, because earlier I had talked about this feeling of true connectedness that I feel in nature, that I know I'm not alone in feeling. And I think that's maybe it. I mean, there's such a difference between loneliness and solitude. Yeah. And when I am in the wild places, I never feel lonely. I feel like I'm in deep solitude, which is, I think the difference between those is, loneliness, you can be in a crowded room, right? And you can be connected to all the people around you talking and buzzing around, and you're alone inside yourself. Solitude is having that contemplative posture while feeling connected to the living universe, whether it to be other people or other animals or the beautiful trees that hold us up when we embrace them, right? And so, I mean, I think that to me has always been powerful medicine. It's medicine I'm certainly seeking right now in my life as well. How has it changed over time for you, Cara? Like it's been now 8 years since John died. You've been in recovery for like 32 years. Congratulations, by the way. That's amazing. How has your relationship to hiking, mountaineering, going on these adventures that you go on, how has it changed? Like, what do you do now? Do you still feel that those things are like really important to your healing and recovery and survival, or are they just fun things you like to do now?
Both. They're fun things I like to do, and they're crucial for my well-being. I want to go back though to something that you said about solitude and connection, and I feel like I love that, the idea of the difference between loneliness and solitude. I don't feel lonely in the woods at all. I feel like they're my friends.
Yeah.
I really do. I feel like when the wind blows through the leaves of a tree, I feel like they're waving to me.
They are.
Right, exactly.
I mean, we're just not making this up. It's real. Like, they're living beings, and they are your friends.
They are my friends. They are the rocks, everybody. Plus obviously all the critters, and seeing myself in relationship to all of this alive around me. I feel in great company. In great company. So how has it changed? How is it now? I think now it's really interesting. I have this beautiful blend of, I can be grinding up a peak and identifying flowers and birdsong along the way, which isn't something that I used to be able to do. I didn't know anything about what the flowers were or who the birds were. And now I'm somehow like I'm absorbing more of it as I move through it, whether I'm moving through slowly and, or moving through in my aggressive way. I mean, I still like to grind up peaks. I just did it this last weekend with friends, and I'm going again next, I need to sweat. I need to sweat in the woods to feel okay about, to feel okay in myself.
Right. It's really fun.
And it's super fun.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
At least in retrospect. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about my retrospective fun theory of.
No, tell me.
that basically, like, backpacking and hiking, at least for me, it's like, I always describe it as it's more in the camp of like retrospective fun. Like, while you're doing it, you're often like thinking, I cannot wait to stop doing this. Like, when are we going to get to the destination? When are we going to get to the mountaintop? When are we going to get back to the car so we can go have, burgers, and sit in the shade, or, when can this be done? But then when it's done, you look back on it, you're like, that was so fun. And so I think my theory of almost, and this is true in all the different things I do, weightlifting or running or getting on my Peloton or doing yoga. It's like, I sometimes enjoy it while I'm doing it, but I enjoy it far more when I'm done with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something to getting back to your car, stripping off the disgusting clothes, and what snacks are we going to get? Exactly. What are we going to get to stuff our faces with? And also knowing that that's true for me, that I'm going to look back on this and really be glad about it. And really, I do try to stop and call attention to, oh, this is the thing that I love doing. This is the thing that I'm going to look back on and be happy about that I did. What, even as, what is it, like, what can I smell in this moment that fills me up, that feels good? What can I see or take in this moment? Can I shift my perspective so that I take in this moment and I'm present to it as I'm knowing in fact that I'm going to love it at some point in future. What is it? Can I in this moment be present to and take in? I do try to make a practice of that.
Before we say goodbye, which we need to do soon, I realize we need to answer a Dear Sugar letter, and you talking about filling yourself up and me talking about the things I do to fill myself up too. We have a letter from a woman who is basically exactly our age. She's 58. Are you 58?
I'm 58.
I'm 57. So, okay, I'm the baby of this group officially. But she needs some filling up. So can I read you the letter, Cara?
Yes, please.
Dear Sugar, I'm a 58-year-old American woman, a typical common person, usually looked over, nothing shiny, just average. The youngest of 3 girls who kept herself hidden in her closet when her parents, really her father, started yelling over something as simple as leaving a dish in the sink or a tissue on the bathroom counter. I would hide from the yelling, hide from the crying, cover my ears, and sing to myself to not hear the explosive curse words coming out of his mouth. They say you marry what you know, and that's exactly what I did. Although if you would have asked me at 19 if the man I married was anything like my father, I would have protested and screamed, nothing at all like him. How wrong I was. He never matured really past the age of 18. What started out as slight pushing and gaslighting became throwing things, then throwing things at me, and you know the rest. I just wanted to be a wife and mother and live in a cute house. I had all that. But after 24 years, when he told me he fell in love with someone else, it was my out. I finally had a ticket to freedom. What I thought was the toughest time of my life because I had no money and nowhere to live turned out to be a blessing. After being single and alone for a while, I learned more about myself than ever before. It was a rough few years, but with help from my family, I got through it. At this stage in the game, you can say I really do have everything I dreamed of. Both of my children are happy, married, in good relationships. I have grandchildren. I have a really nice place to live and a good, steady job. I have someone who I adore and is a wonderful human being. But I'm still searching for something. I feel lost. While I should feel joy about my life and where I am, I feel nothing. Nothing brings me happiness lately. I'm not even sure what happiness is. I'm not sure what love is. I feel like I'm lying about everything, even to myself. Think positive, they say. Go for a walk, they say. I do these things, but I feel my insides cringing, tightening. My heart is heavy. I long for a place where there's a soft breeze and I'm alone. I feel drawn to be alone, but when I'm alone, I feel lonely. I visit my sisters, but after 30 minutes, I'm ready to go home. All these pictures on social media about parents with their children and how it's great spending family time together. I do see my children who are now adults, but I'm not even sure I enjoy that. I go through the motions, doing the right thing, pleasing everyone. Then I sit home and go over everything I said. Was I kind enough, funny enough, good enough? I'm still searching. For what exactly? I'm 58 years old and I feel like I'm drowning in air. Thank you, Sugar, for all you do. Sincerely, still searching. Hard letter. I feel like before we even begin offering some advice, I just want to right off the top address the thing that really you and I can't do, which is, I do think still searching. I want to first encourage you, to see a doctor because this could be depression. And so I think, Cara, what you and I can address are, anecdotally from times in our own lives where we felt like we're lost or we're not enough or all of those empty feelings she describes so vividly. But I do want to also first counsel you still searching to, sometimes it's a matter of really needing professional help, that you are in a depression that maybe medication could help with or professional counseling. And what we're offering here today is sisterhood and a sense of like some conversation from two women who have been in some of these places that Still Searching is describing.
Yeah, I'm glad that you say that. I can say that, that in my experience, I needed what we call in the rooms, I needed that outside help. I avail myself of psychiatric support, and it saved my life. So I definitely want to echo what you just said, Cheryl, so eloquently, that we're here to offer, as I would say, my experience, strength, and hope is what I can offer, and that my experience is that I did need that kind of additional help. But what I want to also think about is something that I heard in the letter about, I can really identify with growing up in trauma and growing up in a loud household, a violent household that in my formative years really impacted me. And I believe as I devolved into being in a violently an abusive relationship, that the healing that I've done and been doing and am still doing, that happened in those formative years, a lot of that work, I'll say the additional work to counseling and to psychiatric support, is I've been doing reparenting work, where I am comforting that little girl that hid in the closet. I am comforting that little girl that was afraid to leave her room because she didn't know what the mood was in the rest of the house. Was it safe? And so because that happened at a formative time in my growth, we've learned that this changes our brain chemistry, changes our body chemistry to go through this kind of trauma early on, that I have really needed to learn ways to comfort and soothe that traumatized girl that is, that is still with me. So, and to encourage her and love her and support her and let her know that I'm here for her in a way that I couldn't be here for her. And that I'm going to go to the ends of the earth to take care of her. And that's included getting that additional help. So those are some things that first come to mind when I hear the letter that I wanted to share.
Yeah. And I think that's such wonderful counsel, Cara, because I think it goes back to those early traumas. The letter starts there for a reason, right? That's the foundation. But also, I want to say what I was struck by is what a good life Still Searching managed to build. Okay, that had these, finally got that freedom from that marriage that was abusive and awful. Did find love with, as she says, a wonderful human. Did raise two children who are thriving. Did achieve those dreams that, at least for a time, she embraced. And what I would say is what's happening right now is kind of a gift, this kind of reckoning where, she sort of says a few times that these things were all like the shoulds, she fulfilled the shoulds. And maybe one of the most powerful things about being 58 or being the ages that we are in middle age, is we get to be now in that next era of our lives where it's like, okay, I jumped through all those hoops. I lived, I responded to my trauma in these ways. And then I met the societal expectations in these other ways. And now what is it that I want? And, Still Searching, the fact that when you turn back to yourself and you feel that sense of nothingness, can be in so many ways the beginning of a journey where you really undertake to find out what it is you want, find out what it is you love, find out what it is you need, and, rewrite that script, that you've in some ways, lived a life of a story that was written by others for you. And now you get to write it for yourself. And, when we are at that bottom moment where you're like at a place where you write a letter like this to me and say like, there's nothing there, that it's from where so many of the best things, the most powerful evolutions and growth opportunities begin.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I would just add to that piece around, um, one of the parts of me that has fun is my little girl. So,
Mm,
that little girl, so that comforting her and asking, because again, when we grow up in trauma, we often have a distorted relationship with fun and joy and finding out what we like to do. And that's when we become contorted into that people pleasing that she spoke about. I need to read the
yeah.
room. And so then turning to myself as a woman, certainly, but also the little girl inside me, and say, what would feel good? What
Yeah.
would you like to do? And trying things out without, and without that idea of, like you said, without that idea of should, like, oh, well, I should
Yeah.
like this, or I should feel a certain way about something. Like, well, walking in the woods should make me feel better. Being with my sisters should make me feel better. That Still Searching wrote about. Well, it's, she's saying that it's not. So keep asking, keep asking. I would say that little girl who maybe wants to play and find some fun, what might be fun, and try a bunch of dumb stuff out.
Yeah. And let everything be on the list. I mean, so to sum it up, I think, still searching, our homework for you is see a doctor. I think that's important, or a therapist, somebody who can help you assess like what's happening to you psychologically and emotionally. And like do nothing that you're doing because you should do, and find out what's fun. And it can be anything. I mean, and I think it's totally okay. Like I love when you were talking about those early days of grief. One thing that came to mind, is for myself too, is you were describing like you were in such a state of sorrow and trauma that you just simply had to let yourself do whatever you needed to do. And I'm there too. I started doing jigsaw puzzles, and I haven't done puzzles for years because I don't have time. I always think like, oh, I'd like to do a jigsaw puzzle, and I've been doing jigsaw puzzles, and I don't even know why, but it's like it is so comforting to me because my mind is focused on putting these stupid things together, um, and it gives me some pleasure during a time in my life when I'm in absolute agony.
Yeah.
And I've just decided I don't have to know why I'm doing it. It's what I need to do. And so still searching, I think that's it too. Like get rid of those stories like, if you walk, you're going to feel better. Now, of course, I tell people that all the time, go for a walk. I promise you'll feel better. But that's a kind of arrogance and misinformation, I guess, because if you're not feeling better when you walk, go find something else that does make you feel better. And the piece of this that I want to really empower you with still searching is it is up to you to save yourself. It is up to you to find meaning in your life. It is up to you to replace that sense of nothingness with that place of with that sense of nothingness with wonder or meaning or satisfaction or whatever that is. Nobody's going to swoop in and do it for you. I know that for certain.
Same here. But kudos for reaching out and speaking honestly to where you're at. And that is the beginning of the journey.
We wish you well. Okay, so Cara, you're a really good dear sugar. Thank you. What's your next literal mountain to climb and metaphorical mountain to climb?
Still figuring out the literal mountain. We're looking at, a friend of mine and I are looking at Tecumseh in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. It's one of the 4,000 footers over there. So I'm looking at that for Sunday, depending upon weather. And the metaphorical mountain is still, well, I'm out doing events for the book. I'm doing events in the Northeast. I'm coming out to the West Coast in the fall.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'll be up in San Francisco and hoping to come up to Portland.
Cool.
Yeah. So just the metaphorical mountain is supporting the book in the world. I went through I know where I'll just say that I went through exquisite grief, not only in living those experiences, but then in revisiting them to write about it. And I was compelled to do that. So it feels important to me to really advocate for this story out in the world. As much as sometimes I'd really rather just be, under the covers with my cats. It's really important for me I feel compelled to be out there to make sure that, that the story that I wrote of John and me, gets its time out there. And then you've been a great part of that. I'm really, really grateful and appreciative. Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you. And it's a beautiful book. Congratulations. And everyone can find out about your events in your book is it carabenson.com or carabensonwriter.com?
carabensonwriter.com.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, Cara, thank you for being on Mind Over Mountain. This was a really wonderful, special conversation, and I appreciate you being my guest.
I appreciate you having me, Cheryl. Many, many, many blessings in this time.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to write me a letter seeking advice, please email it to me at dearsugar@gmail.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Happy trails, and I'll see you next week. Mind Over Mountain with Cheryl Strayed is an iHeart Women's sports production, produced by Brittany Brown and Rodney Brown of Barbara Jean Productions. Supervising producer is Kaylin West at Realm. Associate producer, Amaya Brathwaite. Our executive producers are Molly Barton, Jerry Carita, Grace Fuse, and Jesse Katz. Our theme song is composed by Gramoscope Music. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Happy trails, and I'll see you next week.